Good Yontif, everybody. My own, the book says Life is with People, the book about the shtetl, and my life in Judaism has been greatly deepened and expanded by looking at text and studying with central congregants. So I'm so glad to be here. And I wanted to, since we have just 30 minutes, there'll be a little bit of Socratic stuff, but there'll be a lot of very directed, headlong stuff. So I'm going to share my screen, and the first thing we'll do is read the beautiful translation of Isaiah 58 by Central Congregant Linda Lynn, whom I do not know, but it was offered to me by Peter Jakes. Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to share my screen, and okay, are you guys seeing this? Are you guys? Okay, great. So who will read this haftarah? Somebody, jump in. Livia, read.
Okay. Yom Kippur Morning Haftarah, translation by Linda Lynn. Shout with all your might like the effort of blowing the shofar. Tell the people of Israel and the people of the world that they have sinned. They have worshiped and studied daily to learn and practice my teachings. They have adhered to the laws of God. They have come to me for advice and answers on how to become closer to God. The people question why. When they have obeyed the rituals and fasted, has God not listened to them? I, Isaiah, respond that you are only performing the rituals superficially. You are still constantly thinking of your business, not treating your employees as you could. You still fight with associates and friends. You go through the motions of penitence with no true commitment. You do not fast with a clear mind and heart. When you do this, do you really think that this is the type of fast God is looking for? No. This is what God wants. You are to do more than physically deprive yourself of sustenance. You need to be committed to yourself and the community at large, to try to alleviate injustice, to help others who are less fortunate, whether they need food, clothing, housing, or other services. In doing so, you must not forget to reach out to your family, whether they are sitting beside you or scattered around the world. They are part of you. Then and only then, when you call out, God will hear you, for you have become a partner in God's work of compassion and righteousness. God will be there for you and with you to light your way, to protect and care for you as you yourself have done for others.
Thanks, Livia. So I'm going to keep it on this sharing, but if you want to see everybody, you can, if you go to the gallery view, the one that looks like a rubric cube, and then you pull down on one side, you can see, I think you can see pretty much everybody. Okay, so what about this haftarah? How does it strike you? And maybe some of you know it very well, and I wonder how it strikes you this year as opposed to any other year. Who wants to comment on it? If we look at especially the penultimate graphs, of course, which is what I want to focus on, and this sort of calling out of a superficial attempt, right, at atonement. Did that resonate with anybody, or what is being asked of us?
Ari today, can you hear me?
Yep.
Ari gave a very, very powerful sermon today. And when you read this paragraph, it's, comes from the heart of the very essence of what he was saying. So, and he was referring to a completely different prophet, but he had the phrase prophetic
perspective.
And clearly it's the same prophetic perspective, which is a tongue twister.
What I thought was so interesting about what he said in relation to this is the poles of heartbreak and commitment, which I think come up perfectly here. I in looking for a poem to pair with the haftarah reading, a poem that might reflect it or might refract it, I was first looking for a poem that had a theme of, you know, authentic sacrifice as opposed to disingenuine or superficial. And I really just couldn't find what I wanted. And I kept coming back to a poem that many of you probably know, which talks about something in relation to that. So because Judaism does not shy away from reading the same things over and over again, and because they actually tend to move us more and more if we think they're beautiful, I kept coming back to Szymborska's, oh, forget that E, even though it's a cyber thing, under one small star, it should say. Well, I can't move it now. I kept coming back to this poem, which also sometimes is translated as under a certain little star. So it's translated here by her preeminent translators. She, Polish poet who died in 2012, won the Nobel Prize in 1996. So Carol Weiner, would you read this poem for us?
Gladly. Under one small star. My apologies to chance for calling it necessity. My apologies to necessity if I'm mistaken after all. Please don't be angry, happiness, that I take you as my due. May my dead be patient with the way my memories fade. My apologies to time for all the world I overlook each second. My apologies to past loves for thinking that the latest is the first. Forgive me, distant wars, for bringing flowers home. Forgive me, open wounds, for pricking my finger. I apologize for my record of minuets to those who cry from the depths. I apologize to those who wait in railway stations for being asleep today at 5 a.m. Pardon me, hounded hope, for laughing from time to time. Pardon me, deserts, that I don't rush to you bearing a spoonful of water. And you, falcon, unchanging year after year, always in the same cage, your gaze always fixed on the same point in space. Forgive me, even if it turns out you were stuffed. My apologies to the felled tree for the table's 4 legs. My apologies to great questions for small answers. Truth, please don't pay me much attention. Dignity, please be magnanimous. Bear with me, O mystery of existence, as I pluck the occasional thread from your train. Soul, don't take offense that I've only got you now and then. My apologies to everything that I can't be everywhere at once. My apologies to everyone that I can't be each woman and each man. I know I won't be justified as long as I live, since I myself stand in my own way. Don't bear me ill will speech that I borrow weighty words, then labor heavily so that they may seem light.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. You know, Angela was talking today about breath, and one of the great treasures of poems is that they get to go through all our breath. Anybody can read a great poem aloud. Okay, so any thoughts about what relationship this poem might have to the Haftorah, and what is this speaker trying to reconcile? What's her conflict? What are her considerations about some Bonnie?
I think that it has to do with our lack of perspective so often. We say things and do things that are so incidental, really, in the scheme, in terms of what's really needed and in the scheme of things. And we feel so entitled in ways that we are unaware of. Mm-hmm. And I think it says it so powerfully and so beautifully. And part of the question is putting it in in terms of an apology makes it sound so genuine and authentic. But is that in fact also another way of performing and not really doing?
Oh, how fascinating. Thank you for that. Any response to Bonnie's question, which is really at the heart of, at the end of the poem, right? She's asking that very thing, right? She's saying, oh, maybe I'm just, can you see that part? Don't bear me ill will speech, that I borrow weighty words and labor heavily so that they may seem light. The opportunism of the artist, maybe, or, but anyway, so I'm glad you brought up perspective. Who was saying something?
I was Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Jessica. I totally agree with Bonnie. I think this poem gets to the heart of the haftarah as well as to the whole part of the high holidays. What we do before the high holidays as a tradition is to apologize to all those we have wronged, knowingly or unknowingly. And that is what we're doing here. We're never going to totally get it right, and we're always going to be off somehow, but every year we keep trying, and in the poem every moment we keep trying. And what the high holidays does for us is it gives us that reset button that we kind of take an accounting of where we've been off the mark this past year, and we're going to give it another shot. And we keep hoping to get closer to the goal, to the mark. But as the poem points out, we kind of never do, but we still keep trying.
That's such an important part. We kind of never do because why? And she keeps portraying it to us. What is it? Why can't we ever really? You know, why are we always going to need to, hopefully, need to apologize? If you say, I apologize to the felled tree for the table's 4 legs, you know, there's going to be a lot of apology that's going to need to go around, right? Or I'm lying in my warm bed and someone is in a railway station at 5 a.m. I'm sure even just like, you know, you pass someone at a bus stop when it's raining and you're like, oh, you know. So what is that? What is that? And it has to do with perspective that Bonnie mentioned too, but it also has to do with what you mentioned, Emily, which is like we're always going to have to. We're always going to try, and we're always going to fail because in the
necessity of living, we're always going to be doing something, for lack of a better word, wrong. To give one example is if you're not a vegetarian, you kind of have to apologize to every chicken you ever eat. Mm-hmm. And even to the cucumbers, because you pulled them out of the ground and you didn't let them be naturally going wherever they were going to be going.
Yeah, where's it ever going to stop? So what is she trying to locate, though, when she's bringing these things up? And what are we trying to do when we're looking so closely during, you know, during those parts of the service where we're really, you know, trying to excavate the self and see what is in her, what is she trying to reconcile? And what are we trying to reconcile?
Not sure, but like less of an ego in that we're all one and that we're all going to do this together. Like it seems to be what came over this whole holiday, especially last night's sermon and today and at 1 o'clock, the group of that we're all trying. And if we just remove ourselves from the personal and think of the collective, we could all do it together.
Thank you so much, Beth. So the way that would come in, I mean, when this year, this year has been a year of terror, and we don't know what the future will hold. But when it comes to what we need to do to sacrifice, to make authentic sacrifice at this point, when she talks about, you know, this is one of those poems that's saying, how can I be a human being in the right way, the best way, the way I myself can most accept it, when I know that for whatever I'm delighting in the world, that there is suffering out there, that in some way, whatever my act is, there's going to be. I was saying to someone, oh, these are this jewelry is from my grandmother, and she said, is that coral? And I thought, oh my God, did like the grandmothers like kill the coral reef? Like, you know, so we're in this spot of saying, in this human condition, in this year we've just had, what is the most authentic way to be giving, to be sacrificing of ourselves? And that, go ahead. Yes.
I was going to say, I'm going to push this a little bit more, because I think it's a lot more than that. And it goes to both sermons from last night and this morning. And the line to me that really resonated in the poem was, my apologies to great questions for small answers, which I think picks up the theme in the haftarah portion, which is we are really quick to try to find the easy way out. So we fast, but we don't really think about why we're fasting. We say that we want to be forgiven for our sins, but we're not really getting to the heart of what we've done or what matters. And so it's not just about trying to be our better self, but it's about holding a mirror to ourselves and being honest about what we do and don't do, and about holding our own feet to the fire. I mean, to me, that was the point of Rabbi Buchdahl's sermon last night, and the juxtaposition this morning in Ari's sermon between the pain of the past and the hope of the future, and the haftarah portion sort of saying, it's not enough just to like think you're trying to be your better self. You actually have to figure out what it means to be a better person, to do more in a fundamental way. So I think there's a real like shove going on, both with the poem and the haftarah, shoving us in a way that's not very gentle. It's pretty hard, but it's pretty much about finding the place between that past pain and the future possibilities.
So would you say, Livia, that that's like a place for Tikkun Olam? Is that a place to, from the self, to try to repair? If we have to do more than just be depriving ourselves on a given day, and
yeah, it's more than being a vegetarian. That, you know, saves some chickens, and that's maybe a good thing, but it's about what does it mean and why are you doing it, and what's the impact that you're hoping, and is there a hardness, is it hard for you? There's almost a sense that if it's hard for you to do, then you're actually being truer to what's possible for the world in the future.
okay, thanks. So, Carol?
Yes, I think that I agree with everything you've said, Livia and Bonnie, etc. But I think also the way that she chooses these small and large examples, pardon me, deserts, is clear what, you know, where we can take that. My record of minuets, forgive me, open wounds for pricking my finger. We go through life without being conscious of what's going on. Racism existed a long time before George Floyd was murdered. And yet we walk around with our eyes closed, or, you know, not any of us on this, in this group, of course, but, you know, as a society, things are going on every moment in every choice we make, in every value that we accept or disavow. And we need to open our eyes more. What is that phrase it's not up to us to complete the task, but we can't ignore it, or something like that. But, and in some ways, just as a poem, also her form of writing this, like her form of an elchet, is like another version to me of a praise poem, where she's praising all the positives, and here she's apologizing. It's just, I don't know, I just saw that resonating in here as well as another poetic version of this poem.
Nice.
Something that I'm, to add to that, something that I'm wrestling with is almost every line is end stopped, and that I'm sure is not an accident. And the title, and how the title could have been under the, you know, wide open skies, but it's not. And I'm sure there's a clue with the title as to what she wants us to get from the poem, but I'm wrestling with that.
Okay, let's talk about it. So always important to look at the title, and thanks for talking about the form, both Carol and Emily. So under one small star, what star might that be? What star are we basically in relation to?
Star of David.
What?
Star of David.
Oh, interesting. Didn't even come to my mind. But that's great for today. Thanks for that. Szymborska, not being Jewish, might not have thought of that, but I love how it offers itself to us today. Which other one, guys? You know, you could.
Sun.
Yeah, the sun. So here we are. This is the place that we've so far have found life in the galaxy, and this is what it's like to be that life, and to have this understanding. Like by the time she gets to, my apologies that I can't be everything, that I can't be everywhere at once, that I can't be each woman and each man. How am I going to take care of the world if I'm just living my life here and I'm just trying to enjoy? I'm playing my minuets, I'm bringing flowers home. You know, I'm basically being a person. And it seemed to me that in this year with this haftarah, it really was about having to go out and do the work of Tikkun Olam, that we came to this year in, we thought our democracy was going to be able to withstand the dialectic of two parties, and that it was going to be able to offer checks and balances in its arms of government. And what we've seen is how a false generosity, the idea that you're giving when you know you're not, that when elected officials are creating legislation that purports to give but really takes things away, that false generosity is really threatening to overtake a way of life, and that at our moment in this time, we really, our way of authentic giving is, this is one reading for this day, just in this poem, is to find the authentic way, the genuine way to do the work and to help. We can, some of the great poems are trying to reconcile that difference between beauty and suffering, and that we are always trying to find the former, but we know always there's the latter. And what do we do with that? How do we feel about it? How do we feel about ourselves doing that? And what can we add to it so that it feels more balanced to us, what we do have? And the other idea about the title really could be a much more cosmic one even than that, that like, it could be any star. We are just, you know, we're like relatively close to the sun. We're like, you know, really not close to any other one. And here we are under one certain little star. This is it. You know, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, that kind of brings me back to Ari's sermon. There's so many problems in the world. You could like just throw up your hands and say, I don't know where to begin. And I think one of the things he was saying is you got to just pick one of the areas and do the work. You're not going to be able to be everywhere and do everything. And one could look at it as it's so much, I might as well do nothing. And he was saying, just pick something and do some step toward that.
So thank you so much. I think one of the questions for me is not only how do we find it, how do we know we've chosen the right one? How do we feel that we've authentically given of ourselves? You know, and how do we find that way to authentically give? And just wondering if anybody has in her own experience, like, what is it you've needed in order to attach yourself to some form of giving? Like, what is it that works? You know, what is it that lets you know if we're at the heart of the matter on this day, and the heart of the matter is talking to us about us at the very core? How is it that we, with that very core of ourselves, actually give authentically? Like, how can we do it? Like, what has been needed in your own life for that to happen?
Maybe it goes back to what we were saying earlier, which was just going through in the haftarahs, just going through the motions of it, even if it's the right thing. You're not going to feel the same as when you are invested in it in the moment and you're really there.
Yeah, how do you get there? That's my question. How do you get there? In your own experience, how has it happened? Because that's what we're after, right? So we know all the gestures, right? We know all the gestures. And then it's like, what is really needed? You know, what Szymborska does is say, I can't control this, but I can make meaning from it. And the way I do that is I make this poem. And maybe it's not enough. I'm just using speech as a way to maybe get myself off the hook. Right? We're always looking to see. But anyone have any ideas? I have a tiny idea, but I'm more interested in yours.
It kind of reminds me of when you're teaching children or yourselves, when you apologize for something, you can't just say sorry and then do the same thing again. And I think this poem does a really good job of saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and then reconciling with that at the end and wondering if that is enough and what that looks like and what it means. Because if you say you're sorry and then you just, you know, continue doing the same things mindlessly, is the apology enough? And I think the answer is very clearly no, it's not. And something that was resonating with me was I noticed last night and this morning in the English reading of the Al-Khayt, the last one is for the sin of empty confession. And I was like, that's so powerful, because it doesn't matter all the other things you apologize for, as like, if the last one is like, but I didn't actually mean it, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, thanks, Eve. So how do we make it matter, I guess? You know, how do we find what to do after the apology? I mean, really just asking, like, to take it to a next really concrete level. And
Jess, we're just about at time here.
Like, let me just close with one idea about that. And that is that, you know, for Szymborska, as a poet, the life force for her is writing the poem. And that's what she can do. Maybe she does other things, but connecting with that life force. It's what in the transformation and what in the making meaning from your attempt to reconcile, you know, the disparity of what you have and what others don't. How to connect yourself in such a way that your giving is a life-giving force to you. So thank you so much for all being here, and I hope that 5781 finds us in a place of genuine giving, as you guys have all given of your thoughts here. I so appreciate it. So Shana Tova, and
Tova. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you so much. This was really interesting.